Welcome back to Big Dan's Airgun Review channel. Now, this time you're not going to have to wait 8 months for the next review. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your disposition towards me, we've practically got to filming straight away with the next gun, which, to be honest, well, let's just say it's a little bit different to the Benjamin Aquila. Allow me to introduce you to the Snowpeak M25. And yes, I am having to lean back to fit this entire thing in the frame because it's a monster, and that's without the silencer fitted. However, on the subject of accessories and such, let's move on to the feature section of our review and see just what you get with your M25. Hopefully not a breakdown. So then, what features do you get with your Snowpeak M25? Well, it's actually a very feature-rich rifle, it must be said. At the rear of the rifle, you can see here, you've got a really nicely finished off rubber recoil pad. This is also the same design as what you'll see on the Snowpeak or Artemis P35, which we do hope to get reviewed sometime in the future. Moving slightly further along, you can see obviously this is a synthetic stocked rifle, and I will say the stock itself is really nicely finished. As you'll know, some of the cheaper pre-charges, even some of the more expensive ones and some of the Springers out there, they can come with a bit of a scratchy stock. And to know what I mean by that, if you haven't seen it, when we did the Nova Vista Alpha review, the synthetic, you can feel it's just not the most nicest stock on the planet. This is the complete opposite. In fact, I'm not going to make many friends when I say this, but I actually think this is much nicer finished than even on my HW97. It is a lovely, smooth and solid unit. Moving slightly further along, you can see it is a thumbhole stocked rifle, which again, some love. I'm a big fan of it, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. There's also a nice bit of stippling around the grip here and grooving for your fingers to rest, which is a nice little bit of attention to detail. We'll talk a bit more about that when we get to the handling section. Now the trigger, the blade is the same as what you get on the M11 and M22. However, again, when the handling section comes around, we'll talk more into it. The actual feel of the trigger, or the trigger unit itself, what's going on in there, the gubbins, is a lot different than what you get on an M11 or M22. Moving slightly further up, you can see this is the bolt action rifle that, well, it's a very similar bolt than what you've got with the M11 and M22, which is actually a bloody good thing. The M11s and M22s, you might have seen our reviews where you can see you can basically cock the rifle with your little finger. It is a beautiful bolt on these, but we'll talk a little bit more about that at the handling section. You've got a rail on top here for the more secure sort of fitting of a scope. And you can see here at this moment in time we've got the single shot tray put in, as the rifle does come with a single shot tray and the multi-shot mag. A little interesting bit of trivia is the mag is actually the same as what you get on the M30, which surprised me because I thought it was going to be the same as what you get with the M16, M11, M22 and P10, but they've decided to change things up a little bit, but we'll look a bit more into that a bit later on in the video. This is what confuses me though. As we move further along, you've got the barrel band, which no big deal. It's this, well, same as what you get with the M11, M22, guns like that do have a chunky band on them, but it's also got another accessory rail sitting on top. Now, surely that's going to conflict with the scope, isn't it? Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe we might see if we can put something on there and test it a bit later on, if I can find something like a laser to put on there or see what we think, but it would have made much more sense if they had put it on the sides at least, because then there is zero risk of it getting in the way of the scope. But I guess it's nice to have a little extra freebie on top there, even if in my mind at this moment in time it maybe doesn't make the most sense. You can see the rifle does have a rather nice barrel shroud covering the length of the barrel. To my knowledge, I don't think it is actually a baffled shroud. It's just simply there to look smart, and to give it credit, it really does. The finish on it is lovely. You can see here at the minute you do also get a lovely metal thread protector on the end here, which, yeah, it's nicely finished. It is a nice lump of metal and does the job. Also, you get this silencer. Now this, to the keen eye, you'll be able to see this is not the same unit as what you get with the M16 or the M11. It's a much chunkier, more sturdy feeling unit with a different baffle system going on the inside. But we'll give that a bit more of a test later on when we give the rifle a couple of shots and see what it sounds like. Another improvement is the fact that it now has a dust cover. If you can see that there, on the older guns, the M11 and M22, this was exposed, but on this you've actually got a swiveling dust cover, so very nice. Moving slightly further along, you have also got another accessory rail. Now this one makes much more sense because I think that if there was any gun that was going to be designed to have a bipod, it's this one. Moving slightly further afield, you've also got in there somewhere a pressure regulator, which hopefully should give us some pretty excellent consistency. And I've also got to mention that the safety is in the blade, as per the M11, M22 and M16. Not the biggest fan of that, but we'll talk a bit more about that later. And the pressure gauge, I can't just hate this gun for it. Let's be fair, a lot of air rifles out there these days, they do. It's just easy to put the pressure gauge on the end of the cylinder, but it's right underneath the barrel, which I am never a fan of. So that's it for features with the Snowpeak M25. You also get a little pack of spare seals, tools and things like that to just in case in the future something does go wrong, you can get it repaired pretty quick. And that is the lovely thing about the Snowpeak and Artemis guns, is the fact that you can strip them in minutes. There's nothing too complicated in there, so they're a lovely bit of kit to tinker with and all that good stuff. So that's it when it comes to features with the Snowpeak M25, but I wonder how heavy this brute is. Let's find out. Just quickly, and I do apologise for my childish sense of humour, but this gun, I've just had a thought come into my head. I don't know if everybody who watches this, if they've ever seen the comedy TV series called Red Dwarf back in the day, but do you remember the scene where each time they had a transition, it'd show you the length of the spaceship and it just seemed to go on forever? Well, da 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 da. Sorry, I'll get the scales out now. So we've got the scales out and let's take a look. As you can see here, she comes out at 8.44 pounds. This is also the only time that I've actually had to check to make sure that the barrel was not touching the floor, because it's really not far off. But 8.44, it's a little bit heavy compared to maybe a lot of guns out there. The average is usually around 8 pounds, but genuinely not as heavy as I thought it was going to be. So that's it for weight. Let's move on now to handling. But first, let's take a closer look at that little mag. So, loading the mag of the M25. Well, if you've got an M30, you'll already know how this works. Simply spin the dial all the way around and hold it in place with your thumb. And if you can, get your middle finger and cover up the hole out the rear of the mag, because otherwise your pellet, there's good odds it's going to plop all the way through. Hold that in place, load the first pellet through the top like so, and then after this you simply reload the rest of the mag until she's full up and you're ready to shoot. Job done, nice and easy. So that's the mag out of the way. Next up, let's move on to handling and see just what the M25 feels like when it's put to the shoulder. Judging by the length, I'm imagining a bit weird. So then, handling. What do we think of the Snowpeak M25? Well, it's definitely an interesting brute because despite the size of it, it actually shoulders weirdly well. I mean, it's a long gun, but I think the pro and con of that, obviously one, it's huge, but two, the pro is it displaces the weight really well throughout the entirety of the rifle. I mean, if we check balance now, you can see it's pretty much, got to be careful because the stock, the underside is round, so it's a little bit difficult to hold it level. But if you can see that there, it's almost dead on the center of the action, which is impressive considering the length of the bloody thing. Now, the other thing that I'm going to mention is also the, as we said in the feature section of the video, it's not all brilliant. For instance, the safety, I don't like it. Safeties in trigger blades is just a stupid idea, pretty much full stop. Why would you put, as I know I've used this before, but it's true, why would you put the accelerator or the brake pedal inside of the accelerator? That's never going to really go too well. But it's, to be fair, other than that, it's quite a nice and interesting rifle. I mean, the other thing I'll mention is the length of pull is quite short. You can see here that I am sort of tucking my right arm in, maybe just a little bit too much, but it's not really too bad at all. The other good news is with this is that it means that despite the size, you may be slightly younger people, maybe women and such, women shooters, might actually take to this because it is quite manageable for, say, shorter people because of this. The other thing I'm going to mention is the grooves for your fingers. Not really designed for my larger hands. I find my fingers usually, when I'm actually in a sort of shooting position, my fingers usually sit on top of the groove a little bit more than in the groove, but it's not too bad. It's little gripes that, to be fair with you, I can easily live with. The stippling does feel nice, however. That being said, let's see if it does come with the lovely bolt action that you know I like on the M11 and M22. So let's just give this a go. Yes, it does. That was fantastic. You might have, if you haven't seen the M11 and M22 reviews we've done, I've gone as far as to say on that it is possibly the nicest out-of-the-box bolt action that you're going to find on pretty much any air rifle. And it's the same with this. You could see there was no real clickiness or anything like that to it. It was just, and that's it. Again, we'll do the test in a second, but I'm quite confident I could cock this with just a little finger. But let's have a little play with the trigger now. So we've got that to the shoulder and fingers on the trigger. We're going to check the safety's off. Yes, it is. And there's second stage right there, if you can see that. In fact, I'll just change the view just a little bit here. That's my thumb there. You can see there, hopefully, bouncing off second stage. In fact, let's go little finger. Let's see if we can do it. So second stage. Yeah, you can do it with your little finger. That is a massive improvement over the M11 and M22, which have a very similar trigger blade, at least, to this rifle here. Don't get me wrong, they can have a really nice trigger if you just take that stock off and just give it a little bit of an adjustment. This is just seriously fine out of the box, simple as. That is a lovely bit of kit, that really is. There's maybe a tiny little bit of creep from the second stage before it fires. Let's just give that one more go. Oh, no, that's empty. That's the mag completely empty. So let's plop that down there. Let's leave that shut for now. So nothing in there. Close that up and let's just give it one more go. So let's just see. So there's a little finger. If I can close it. Just like that. Beautiful bolt action, it really is. Just get another feel for that trigger. So you might have seen there, it's hard, but tiny little bit of creep, and then it finally goes. It's not distracting at all, to be honest. And again, I'm sure you might even be able to adjust that out because it is an adjustable two-stage unit on this. But it's just a lovely piece of kit. The thing that I'm really interested in though, and it bloody well should be like this considering the length of the bloody barrel and the silencer on the end, it's quiet too. I mean, this lapel mic, the new ones we're using, these wireless ones, they're really sensitive to sound, which is excellent. And you might remember, if you've seen it, the Benjamin Aquila review, I said about the action's got a little bit of a ting to it, and this picked it up beautifully. But I challenge you, tell me if you can hear anything through this. In fact, I'm even going to cheat, and the gun is empty. I'm going to put it right up to the mic. Now you tell me if you can hear a twang of a spring. Nothing. That is a sweet action. Even the muzzle report from the gun itself. Bear in mind, again, like we said, there's no pellets in this. So it is going to be louder than, obviously, if you actually had the gun loaded, ready to go. So, but just have a little listen to this. It's one of the quietest out-the-box guns that we've had. Listen. And that's it. I was quite shocked when we first had these come in. Because these, well, to me at least, they pretty much came out of the blue. It's, oh look, we've got this gun in now, and I thought, ooh, I like that. That's Dan size. I thought that they were broken when they first turned up, because when we took them out of the box, had a dry fire with it, all that sort of thing, I thought, oh dear. If you shot an M16 or even an M11, which comes with a silencer, there's a little bit of sound there. Oh no, this thing's busted. I'm sure it is. Put it through the chrono, it was doing 11.3. Now granted, I don't know what this one's doing. We haven't chronographed this yet. Maybe this is only doing about 8 feet-pounds, which is why this one's so quiet. And bear in mind, we're in the barn at this moment in time. You can hear it creaking all around and all that sort of thing. If it's going to be loud anywhere, it's in here. And it's just, well, just listen. Nothing there. But no, I'm a very happy chappy with this. Handling-wise, genuinely not quite as weird, perhaps, as you'd expect it to be. Just bear in mind the slightly shorter length of pull, maybe, than what you might expect. Other than that, it does come up to the shoulder really, really nicely. I will mention, though, what we was talking about earlier at the feature section. I still don't see the point in this here. Maybe you can elaborate. Some people in the comments maybe can say what this is here for, because if you even get a laser on there, look how close that scope is to this. I mean, height. I mean, bear in mind, these are, you can see, these are raised mounts. These aren't tiny little mounts. You're not really going to get anything on there without it interfering with the scope big time. So I don't fully understand that. But other than that, I mean, yeah, colour me impressed. That is a really interesting thing. And this stock is really nice too. Like I said, there's no scratchiness. It's just, it's a nice solid unit. But yeah, colour me impressed. However, it could all fall apart when we get to the chronograph section. So why don't we whack it out, give it a full refill, and see just what this gun's doing. And we'll check for consistency, power and shot count. So let's have some fun. Right, so chronograph time. This is actually the second attempt at doing this, because the first time, you may have noticed we've moved back to our original spot that we used to film in. The first time the sun was actually coming across the chronograph and we started getting really whack readings. It went from about 10.9 down to about 10 within about one shot, and then it'd sort of fluctuate up and down. We then moved the chronograph out the way just to make sure it wasn't the gun, just to see if it was the chrono or not, and it was. We moved the rifle and chrono to a different location, and it was basically fine. So I thought, instead of doing it all over, instead of carrying on and then having to sort of explain and say, look, it's not the gun or this sort of thing, I thought, right, it's best off just to restart it, really. So we're going to have another go at filming this now, please God with no interruptions. We are going to be using the Rifle Premium Spike pellets, which are a little on the heavy side, 9.72 grains, but they're a pretty consistent pellet. They are going to be straight from the tin, however, so we haven't weighed them or anything like that, so we're expecting a little bit of variation. And as you can see, the rifle is prepped and has had a completely fresh fill up to 250 bar. So let's see what the gun can do through the chrono and see how many shots we get. Well, consistency testing with the M25, what do we think? Well, I think the rifle got a little bit unlucky to an extent, and I'll explain why. The rifle, as we said, it was given a maximum fill, bang on 250 bar when it came to testing. A lot of people may know this or may not. When you max fill a regulated gun, occasionally you can get instances where the air is basically, where it's so full up, it seeps into the regulator, and the reg's got to basically dump itself until it can function properly, which I think is what we can see here. With the first few shots, it goes up to 11.95 and 11.98, which is a bit hot for the UK. After that, though, you can see it does bleed off very nicely where the reg clears itself, and it doesn't really have these really high numbers again. It sort of hovers around the 11.7s, but then you can see it drops off there really nicely to where it should be. We also got unlucky with, you may have seen one of the shots, if I can just skip it on a bit, one of the shots back here, it did just come out at just 10.5 feet-pounds, pretty much out of the blue. Now, I think I'm fairly confident in assuming that that would be a pellet that did that, simply because before this, I can't find it now, I'll have a look, I'll keep having a sieve through, but I think hopefully you should have seen it through the video. Considering the consistency we had leading up to that, the rifle was fine, so I think it was just a heavy pellet. The pellets we used were unweighed. The rifle pellets are usually pretty good through the chrono, but we might have just had a bit of a slug go through there, which just upset everything. The spread that we're getting through the application on the phone itself, I'll just pan this up a little bit for you, I hope you can see that, is 46. Obviously this does include the shots where we shoot it through just to make sure it is bleeding off, and if I just move it up, there you go, hopefully you might have just seen it there. If I come back down, we've got a 10 point, no, it's 11, sorry, where is it? There it is, 10.58, 700 FPS, which again, it's surrounded by, next to it is a 10.85 and an 11.13. So I think we can probably assume that's a heavy pellet. But as you can see here, we shot it off until it bled off. And the really interesting thing, I'll just pan it up so you can take a look. You can probably see that we have got the bipod on there now, which does make the rifle look very sexy, in my opinion. It really does. But yeah, we've shot the rifle till it bled off, and we had around, what do we think? Should we say 229 full power shots, where it sits at 10.85? We had around 229 full power shots. I say 230, it's easier. 230 full power shots before it bled off from a standard cylinder. Now the thing that I'm going to mention which is largely why we're getting that. Obviously, we're a UK-based channel, so all the guns we test are sub 12 feet-pounds. Obviously, you guys in America and abroad, you're going to get a lot less than this. But the thing that's interesting is usually the Snowpeak rifles, well, not Snowpeak, but Artemis, if you know what I mean, usually their rifles, the regulators for our markets are running a bit high. They're doing about 145 to 150 bar. If you own a P15 or an M16, if you shoot it, I can almost guarantee that's where the pressure's going to start coming off. It's a bit too high. However, with this, it was right where it should be. It was about 90 bar before it started giving up. That is spot on. I don't know if the guys at Snowpeak have started tweaking the regs for the markets over here, but it is wonderful if they have been, because you can see by this just the sheer amount of bloody shots that you get from the gun when that is done properly. So consistency-wise, it does deserve a little bit of a break, because you can see there, spread 46, but to be fair, that was with the really hot shots where we are not overfilled, but the gun was maximum filled at the start, and also you can see we shot it to where it was blatantly bleeding off. I reckon it's probably fair to say average spread, if we discount those, is probably going to be around maybe the low 30s, 30 FPS, which over 230 shots isn't bad at all, to be honest, especially for a gun that's not even close to being run in. So it's definitely only going to get better the more it's shot through. However, so far consistency is not too bad, and shot count is pretty astronomical considering what it's running with, but that is meaningless if the gun groups like a shotgun downrange. Now, we are going to be using a slightly different setup today. If you've seen our Aquila review, you'll see we had a little target holder set up, which was, apologies if you can hear wind noise, it is also very gusty today, which is going to be a nuisance. We had a handy little target card holder that we set up. Now, unfortunately, I would use that today, except I think some certain family members have nabbed my 17 centimeter target cards. Typically, so it's what we've got here, the 14 centimeters isn't going to fit, so I'm going to have to get creative with that. But the blue trailer is still gone, so we can still shoot at 25 yards and 40 yards and see just what the gun can do. So let's stop with the lips smacking around, and let's actually get to some target attacking. So we've got the bipod attached, and let's get the M25 all set up and ready to go, and we'll see just what the gun can do, and we found out what pellets it likes the best. So I'll be back in a bit. Okay, so we've done some off-screen accuracy testing. As you can see, we've had quite a selection of pellets for us to test. Now, it wasn't bad with all of them, it must be said. A few just seemed to generate more flyers than others. However, the actual best pellets out of all of them, I can't choose between these two here, the Rifle Field Domes or the good old Webley AccuPel. Ignore the tin of Diablos here, that's empty. But you can see the target is set up at 25 yards. I'm just going to walk you down there now. And all I'm going to say is there is a bit of wind today. Hopefully the lapel mic is blocking it off a bit as I'm walking with the camera. I have actually, I think I might have left it there, sort of rigged up. I know you guys have requested I set up a piece of string or something like that so you can see the wind blowing for yourself. Now, I know it's the laziest, most Big Dan's airgunified wind detector on the planet. Yes, that is the strip of tape that holds a pellet shut. But the issue that we've got is that the wind isn't actually coming from down there. You might see there's some bushes blowing down there, but it's actually coming from straight behind me. And there's not really any real way that I can set the camera up and this, so as you can see the target clearly and this. So basically, the 10 seconds it's taken me to put that together is more or less useless, to be fair, for today anyway. But we'll use it with some of our next videos. Hang on, if I pan it up a bit, hopefully you can see those trees blowing up there. So we're actually going to do 2 tins of pellets at a time to see which one is best. We're going to use we'll go AccuPel first, and then after that we will go rifle, and then after this we're going to move the target over to there with new cards obviously, and then we're going to try them at 40 yards to see which one comes out best. What I will mention is the M25 does like letting in. Some of the Artemis guns that we shoot, when we've given the barrel a quick clean, they're pretty much lasers straight out the box. The M25 isn't quite on that level. It's had a couple of flyers, we've had to run it through. You can actually see, if I move this, there might be some 2-2 holes in this as well, though we've shot other guns into it. You can see it's had a few shots, we'll put it that way. But yeah, it needs to be leaded in a bit before you start seeing the accuracy creep in, and it's quite a nice feeling really knowing that it's actually going to get even better than what we're going to see here today. So we're going to have our shots as we've mentioned, and we're going to see which pellet tin comes out on top and see what the M25 can do. Let's crack on with it. Okay, so we're ready for the 40-yard test. You can see the rifle is set up there, and that is a bloody good looking thing with all that attached to it, it's got to be said. The target, if you can see that, is all the way down there, and typically the wind is still being a bit of an arsehole. So whichever shooting god is up there, please have mercy on me. Here we go. Fingers crossed this goes well. We all know it won't. Okay, so accuracy test results. What do we think of the M25? I'm a pretty happy bunny, especially considering the conditions that we've had to endure when doing this test. You can see we've actually got the tins of pellets covering up both the target cards because they've been loving to do nothing more than blow off whilst I'm trying to get this section done, shall we say. But we have the coins of truth with us, so let's have a look. We've got Acupel on the right hand side. This is 25 yards, 7 shots, and it fits under a 5 pence piece nicely. Then we move over to the rifle pellets, and it's the exact same situation. Oh, just bring it down just a tad. You can see a little furry bit coming out the bottom. Yep, and you can see there it's once again under a 5 pence piece. Now we did then obviously move on to the 40-yard section, and the interesting thing is that the groups are basically, well, they're very, very similar in the way that they're spread. If you take a look, the Acupel tend to have more of a horizontal spread, whereas the rifles was more vertical, and you can see it down here. If we take a look at the Acupels first, we have the 20 pence, because there's no way in hell I'm going to cover that main group up with a 5 pence piece. And it's just about a 20 pence group. You can see the couple of little bits coming out the corner there. There's no way I'm going to bodge that so as I can hide all those little pellet holes. We've got one off to the left, one off to the right. That could be me, as the rifle was, as you may have seen, it was resting on that bucket just there, and I did close the legs up for when we was doing that, and it was just resting on my palm, so there is a little bit more user error potentially involved. But like we said, 2 shots off. Main cluster almost sits in a 20 pence piece, which, considering the gun is pretty much out the box, needs more leading in, and this is a barrel that loves being leaded in too. If you basically, I'll put it this way, if you own an M22, M11 or one of these, don't keep cleaning the barrel, let that sucker get dirty, because I've seen how the results have improved just through the shots we've done off camera with this today. But yeah, it's pretty good. Next up we move on to the rifle pellets, where things are really good. Again, bear in mind the conditions. We are outside, we're not in an indoor range where it's lovely and cushy and there's no wind to get on our nerves. We've got one flyer, because it's Big Dan's Airguns, and we always get one bloody flyer, and you've got the rest of them sitting under that 20 pence piece, which I don't think anyone's really going to complain about that, especially considering the cost of the gun. You can see a couple of little edges poking through, like here and here, but it's a lot tighter than what we have with the Acupels, which again, even with a calm day, I think that's going to be a lot better than what you can see going on here, because there is a bit of dispersion, as you can see. But overall, I'm a very, very happy chappy when it comes to accuracy, considering what it's had to put up with today, both the gun and me. What I will mention, however, is there is a negative that I've noticed that they've sort of snuck away with this gun, and it's something that they've also done with the Artemis M30, and it's something you've got to be careful of. If you can see that probe housing in there, maybe I can cock it and show you what the problem is, but I think you know what's coming. That is a gaping hole, what you can see in there, that is begging to have a pellet fall back there. I don't know why they do it. Well, I do know why they do it. It's ease of manufacture. You've not got to make caliber specific pellet probes and things like that. Just make one size fits all. But that, if you have a pellet fall back down there, you're going to have more jams than basically the motorway that I think this gun's named after, the M25. Bear that in mind when you're shooting the gun. I mean, I didn't have any issues at all. We did use the single shot tray. Again, it was fine, but it has got to be mentioned. And again, that one almost snuck past me. We're getting a little bit lazy with these reviews. So that's it for our accuracy segment. Let's move on to the final verdict and see just what we think of the Snowpeak M25. Okay then, so final verdict of the Snowpeak M25. What do we think? Well, it's certainly an interesting gun, that's for sure, and it does have a few little niggles that we're going to talk about now, but I think my overall takeaway is a very positive one. I'll put it that way. It genuinely surprised me and put a big smile on my face, especially when it came to what it could do downrange and just how much lungs the thing's got. It's ridiculous. But we always talk about negatives first. No rifle is perfect, which is pretty much the motto for this channel. One of the biggest negatives for me is obviously you've got the really silly safety on there, which I've never liked. I don't like the idea of a safety inside of a trigger blade. The other thing, as we mentioned earlier, that we just cottoned on to when we was doing the accuracy testing, that pellet probe housing inside of there is so huge that when you cock the bolt back, that there's very strong odds that you might one day end up with a pellet going back there, which will cause all sorts of problems. Again, it can be avoided. Don't raise the barrel of the gun when you cock in the rifle or anything like that, or make sure, or just be careful basically when using the single shot tray or the mag, just in case something slides back out. But at the end of the day, it definitely does need mentioning because these things do happen. There's probably plenty of M11, M22 and M30 owners out there that will say the same thing. My gun's jammed up, I then found a squished pellet inside of the trigger setup, simple as that. It's an easy fix, but it's annoying that it keeps happening. The trigger's got a little bit of horizontal wobble on the go, which you might even be able to hear it. Hang on. It's not much. It might only be isolated to this gun. It's a little niggle more than anything else. It's nothing that's going to make you not want to get the gun, simple as, but it cheapens the feel on what is actually a really nice trigger unit on this gun, and out the box at that. The other thing, it's not really a negative, it's just a bit silly. I don't really like that rail up there. It should have been on either side of the barrel clamp, barrel mount, what you can see on there. It would have been a better setup, simple as. Other than that though, oh, and the gun is long. I'm leaning back at this moment in time, so as you can see the entire length of this thing, like I said, I may have mentioned it earlier, it's a bit like shouldering a snooker cue, but a very well-mannered snooker cue at that. And the reason why I say well-mannered is what we mentioned earlier. The length of pull is actually, despite the fact that I could swear this is longer than an M11 and an M22, the length of pull is actually pretty short. It's not bad at all. Teenagers could use this, women could use this gun, women shooters, without a single problem. It actually, because of this, handles much better than what you think it would. It's also balanced well, which I think is mainly due to the size of the gun. What weight is there? Around 8 pounds unscoped. So with the scope and pod on there, you're looking 10 pounds plus easily. It doesn't feel like a 10-pound gun. It actually behaves really well in the shoulder, and I think it's because the weight is spread out amongst the entire rifle. It's quite clever in that regard. I do like the rail on the underside of the force stock there. As you can see, we put the bipod on. The bipod doesn't come with the gun, unfortunately. Obviously, we can kit you out with one if you want it, which quite frankly, I think should be mandatory on this gun simply for the looks factor alone. I mean, just look at that. It is a great looking thing, it really is. The stock is also fantastic. I mean, it's a fancy polymer, whatever they call it, which I simply say is a fancy plastic. It's nice. It is really nice. I mean what I said earlier when I said it was nicer than my HW97 stock, my synthetic. It genuinely is. The bolt action is pure butter. It really is. You could easily, well, I think I showed it earlier, you can cock it with your little finger, is how smooth that is. And it's a lovely chunky piece of kit. It feels like it's never ever going to break. The trigger unit, as we was mentioning, is genuinely incredibly sweet. I won't mention names because the internet is a scary place, but you'll know who you are when I'm mentioning this. We had a chap come around yesterday who not only shoots the Oban Rapids and such in competitions and all that sort of thing, but he basically builds them almost from scratch, from what I've heard. And I thought, I've got to let him have a look at this just to get his impressions of it. And he actually genuinely loved that trigger, which says a lot considering what he shoots. It is really nice, the unit on this. It is a big improvement than what you get out the box with the M11 and M22. Not to crap all over their triggers. When they're adjusted, they're nice. But out the box, M11 and M22 owners will know what I'm talking about with this. They can be a bit stiff with a few little creepy sections in their pull, which I think we did mention in the M22 review. It's also whisper quiet. It really is a genuinely very quiet gun. A lot of the budget guns that come with silencers, especially if they're an off-brand or their own made silencer, they're not that massively quiet. I mean, like the M16, the P15, they've still got a little pop to them. This is literally, you pull the trigger and it's That's it. There's next to nothing comes out the end of that barrel. And the other thing that's lovely, and you guys will pick up on this obviously because, as we mentioned, the lapel mics are very sensitive, which is great when it comes to explaining how the action sounds when shooting these guns, because you can actually hear it louder than I can. The action on this is just silent. It is just a click and off it goes. And it's so nice as well to have the regulator on this. Again, it could just be this one. I've not tested in depth all the other M25s we've had, but the regulator on this is set perfectly. It's bang on 90 bar, which is exactly what you want in the UK market, which is, well, you see the results with the overall shot count and such. Around 230 full power shots out of something with a cylinder. That is seriously impressive. Because of this, and obviously we'll talk about the accuracy as well, which, as you can see, there is no complaints with that whatsoever, especially considering, as we've said, the conditions and the fact that the rifle does need a lot more leading in, to be fair. I know it's got more to give than that. But yeah, the rifle itself, I mean, you could pretty much, thanks to the shorter length of pull, the fact that it is really nice to shoulder despite the overall length, you could recommend this to most people. I would lean more towards, I think hunters would appreciate this, maybe a little bit more than target shooters, simply because it's got, especially for people that maybe want a PCP, they don't really want to have the hassle of even buying a bottle as such and keep getting that filled. This gun has got so many shots that you could basically buy the gun, get it topped up from your dealer or from us. Again, we will provide you with one if you'd like, get in touch. Little plug in there. But yeah, you could have this topped up. I mean, you've got 230 shots. I mean, I think on a good night, most people shoot maybe 7, 8, maybe 9 or 10 rabbits. That's a hell of a lot of rabbit in sessions. Just fetch it round, get it topped up, and off you go again. You're good for months with one fill. It is a lovely, lovely, well thought out bit of kit. It really is. And the synthetic stock, as we've already said, is nice. It will take some knocks a bit more maybe than what wood will. It'll take the knocks, not show them up quite so badly. It is a tough and good looking piece of kit, and seriously menacing looking, which I do quite like. Target shooters will also like it, of course, especially once you've given it the chance to run itself through and let itself up. Out the box, you do get the occasional flyer with it, which is a fairly typical M11, M22 sort of trait that it's picked up, but you have to let it in. Once it's leaded in, and like I said, there is plenty more to give, I'm sure there is, than what you're seeing here, it does get better and better and better and better. So if you get one and out the box it's shooting, putting out say 10 pence groups at 20 yards or what have you, just put say an extra 100 pellets through it, 200 pellets, and then do it again and check it again. I can guarantee it's going to be a hell of a lot tighter. But overall verdict of the M25, well, I like it simply because it's a Dan sized gun. It's very big, but it's, like we've already said, it's well mannered. It's a gentle giant. I like it. It's tough. It's big, the trigger's nice, it's quiet, it's sinister as all hell. It's the most John Wickian looking PCP that I've ever seen. Again, it's not for everyone. If you want something obviously with a piece of wood, something like that, or something what I'd call pretty, you're not going to be into this. But for everybody else, it's worth taking a look at one. It really is. Just have a shoulder with it, because it's going to handle a lot different than what you think it is by looking at it. But overall, like we said, I am a very happy chappy with the M25. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If there's any owners of the M25, definitely let me know what you think of it. Now, what I would recommend though is please, SMK, Snowpeak, change the name from M25 to even just get rid of the M, call it an R25, something like that. Don't call it after the most unreliable motorway on the bloody planet, please. Because you're begging to get laughed at, simple as. I'll just say this and I'm rambling, and you know who you are. I've got a customer that says the Artemis rifles have got M's in their titles because they're forever having to go back for repair, even though they're not. He owns an R10, so he'd know all about that. Just kidding, I like the R10. But now they've literally just called this the M25. I mean, you've given him everything. But yep, that's it for our M25 review. Thank you so much for watching. Next up, we've actually got quite a few Springers to get reviewed, as we've actually picked up a new supplier. We're very proud to announce that we're now dealing with ASI, so we do have a lot of very nicely made Spanish Cometers to get reviewed. We've got brake barrels, PCPs, you name it. So, very exciting times ahead, and we're going to get the website updated ASAP. So, thank you ever so much for watching, everyone. I hope you have a lovely night or morning, depending on when you're watching this, and I wish you all the best. Take care.